Good afternoon. A very warm welcome to all of you who've joined us here today, both here live in Brussels and also watching us later on video. We're in for, I think, a really fascinating and timely discussion on the rule of law, or as we've titled this panel, the rule of flaw. We hear the term rule of law quite a lot these days in this city. When it comes to calling out rule of law violations, Brussels' double standards have become painfully apparent in the last few months. The silence over what's happening in Spain puts the relentless and politically charged harassment over the past decade of the Hungarian and Polish governments into perspective. Hundreds of thousands have been protesting the socialist Spanish government's proposed amnesty deal with the Catalan separatists, a deal that would violate the country's constitutional order. Yet Brussels has done nothing, next to nothing, to stop it, not to mention not saying anything about it at all. At this event, we will decode the situation in Spain in light of a broader discussion about the rule of law and its often obscure implications on EU dynamics. We'll also touch on the examples of Hungary, which is threatened with yet another infringement procedure, which would prevent it from exercising its rights under the EU treaties, and Poland, whose new left-wing government, under the lifelong Eurocrat Donald Tusk, has been purging contrarian or dissident voices from the media and receives only cheers and encouragement from Brussels. So some questions we hope to answer in this panel. What does the rule of law truly entail? Where does law end and politics begin? And where is the place of values in all of this? What does Spain tell us about the functioning of the European Union? And why does the EU seem to exaggerate one offense but remain willfully blind to another? So we're glad to have you join us to decipher this together. I'd now like to introduce our distinguished guests. To my right is Laszlo Torcsányi. Professor Torcsányi is a Hungarian lawyer, academic, diplomat, politician, and since 2019, a member of the European Parliament. Formerly, he served as Hungarian ambassador to Belgium and Luxembourg from 2000 to 2004, and was Justice of the Constitutional Court of Hungary between 2007 and 2010. He was appointed Hungarian ambassador to France in 2010 and served in that role until 2014, when he continued as Minister of Justice in the third and fourth Orbán cabinets until 2019. He has also been a guest professor and guest lecturer at several French universities, and since February 22 has served as the rector of the Károly Gáspár University of the Reformed Church in Hungary. To his right, we have Zdzisław Marek Krasnodębski. Professor Krasnodębski is an acclaimed Polish sociologist and social philosopher who has taught at many renowned higher education institutions across Europe. Professor Krasnodębski is also a prolific writer, well-known public speaker, and has a long career in politics, both domestically, becoming a member of the Law and Justice Party in 2014, and on the European level as an MEP since 2014. He also has served as the Vice President of the European Parliament, and he is currently a member of the Bureau of the European Conservatives and Reformist Group. To his right, we have Javier Villamor. He is the EU and NATO correspondent for El Debate, the debate in Brussels. He holds a double degree in journalism and audiovisual communication from CU San Pablo University in Madrid. And he has more than 15 years of experience specialized in international politics and conflicts, particularly in Spain, Germany, France, UK, US, and Canada, and has collaborated as an analyst, policy advisor, and consultant. I'm Ellen Fantini. I'm the managing editor of the European Conservative. Join us for this conversation. Professor, the floor is yours.
Many thanks. You enumerated so many titles that I thought that is my necrologue. My necrologue maybe, one day, not today. Many thanks for this invitation, of course. And first of all, I would like to apologize because my working is French. I am Francophone, but I would like to explain my view in English also, because my friend is also here, and this is the common language today. Okay, we can start. This is the rule of law. It is a very difficult expression. When I was young, during the socialist period, I never heard the expression of the rule of law. In Hungary, in Poland, and I think other socialist country, the politician mentioned the socialist legality. The socialist legality is not the ideology behind the expression. When the change of regime arrived, we were so satisfied to introduce the expression to our constitution, the rule of law. We respect the rule of law, l'état de droit or restat. There are different expressions, of course. But we were so happy because it was very important for us that Hungary became a democratic country, can use this expression in his constitution. It was wonderful. Okay, and as a teacher of the university, I give also two lectures to my students about the expression of the rule of law. And for me, it's a legal expression, and firstly, the legal expression, because the lawyer use this expression also, not only the politicians. And it means that we have to make the differences between the legal expression and the political expression. It's two different things. When we speak about the legal expression, I can invite also to help for us the Venice Commission. The Venice Commission, I think that everybody knows this organization. This is an international organization belonging to the Council of Europe, and there are different scholars who give the definition of the rule of law. And they enumerated also the characteristic of the rule of law: the legality, legal certainty, prohibition, arbitrariness, access to justice before independent and impartial courts, respect of individual rights, especially fundamental rights, non-discrimination, equality before the law. And I can enumerate the other characteristic also of the rule of law. I think for the lawyer, it is very clear expression. It's no problem because everybody would like independent court, of course. It is very important, the liberty of the freedom of the speech and so on. I think the expression of the rule of law is connected with the democracy. And Hungary is also a democratic country, as Poland and other countries also. It means for the lawyers it is good. But if go to the European Parliament, immediately I arrive in other building, other vocabulary, and here this expression became an ideological expression. It is very important, the ideological expression. It means there is the right side, left side, and so on, and this expression changed. It's not a legal expression, the political expression. It is possible very easily to condemn the nations, the countries, and so on. It depends who say that the rule of law is in danger. And here, the last 10 years, Hungary received a lot of criticism, but without proof. The most important, when I speak the legal aspect, there is always the evidence, the proof. The rule of law is in danger or not. In this case, you have to prove there is the evidence or there are no evidences. Here in the European Parliament, without any problem, it is possible to condemn a country without any proof. I think it's very important. There is the proof or there are the proof. Here, when Hungary received the criticism, the condemnation as a judge, I think the European Parliament is a tribunal. Because tribunal with the different decision condemn the countries. And there is no defense. And if I would like to mention the proofs, they are not interested by the proofs. It means it's only a discussion, the ideological discussion, to condemn a country without any proof. And this is the problem, because this type of expression is purely ideological content, any connection with the legal expression, the rule of law. And of course, and I think also this is a mockery of the democracy. The mockery of the democracy, because in the democracy you have to prove there is a danger or there is no danger. Here in the European Parliament, it is enough that somebody say that in Hungary there are a lot of problems, the academic freedom doesn't exist, and so on, and everybody believes. When I participated in the AFCO committee, and somebody mentioned that the Hungarian Constitutional Court decided against the European law. I asked, tell me, which decision, you read this decision? You speak about which decision? I don't know the answer. But he mentioned that the Hungarian Constitution decided against the European law. But it is not true in reality. But that he was unable to answer on my question, but without any problem, without proof, everybody can say what he would like. This is my personal view about the expression of the rule of law. What is the meaning of the expression? As a lawyer, for me, it's very important. And my problem here in the European Parliament, there is no voice for the lawyers to explain what is the true. What is the true? I am unable to prove my position. I am unable because nobody is interested. And everybody can say, and after the decision, the political decision, and I think this is ideology totalitarianism. Excuse me in English. Okay, I finish now, and after this I follow with the Hungarian cases also.
Yes, so maybe I also start with a general remark, and then we'll go to the Polish case. I think that is probably, I don't know if Professor Trociani agree with me, because I am not a lawyer, but I was interested in writing in political philosophy and sociology, political sociology. But when I started to read lawyer, theoretist on theoretical level, one of the myths was abolished, because I thought always that law is precise, that the law theory is precise. No, it is not. Yeah, so some principal concept, general concept, also the questions, law as such. Yeah, is a question of the discussion, which are philosophical discussion. Not philosophical discussion are always political discussion. And we know all, if you read all this prominent, like Professor Trociani lawyer, we all know that sometimes I read many Germans and Americans. And, what strikes me that sometimes they are very intelligent and very useful observation, theoretical level. When they come to Poland and Hungary, they actually totally lose their wisdom. Yeah, they are on the level you just described. Yeah, they repeat the slogans from the press and so on. Yeah, to give you example, two eminent German professor of law, but also the members. One of was the president of the German Federal Constitution Court, Andreas Voskuhle. Or Dieter Grimm, and so on. And sometimes I'm totally, first of all, for me, it's interesting now intellectually that it is not so precise. It depends on the context, on the political or the philosophical tradition you are coming from, more realistic, more idealistic, more. And on the other hand, how the people who know all this complication became so simplistic when they're talking, about our country. Besides, that in European Parliament, it's my 10th years, there was never a serious discussion, even in AFCO committee. There were never serious discussion about the crucial points, as I would say, generally, yeah. So it's a very, very funny parliament in this way. Yeah, they have some. We have do
Agora.
something useful work, you know, in my ITRE committee concerning regulation, and so sometimes they are not useful, sometimes they're useful. But let's say, as I just wanted to quote Voskuhle, he said something like that. The ideas about what is understood in detail by the rule of law or état de droit differs in the member states. Even if we take the language, yeah. You cannot really translate this, yeah. Rule of law, rząd prawa, what in Polish, yeah. And German used Rechtsstaat, yeah, Rechtsstaat, yeah. And the Rechtsstaat, to quote the other very known, unfortunately late philosopher of law and lawyers, Böckenförde, he was also a member of the Constitutional Court. Rechtsstaat is a word combination and conceptualization unique to the German-speaking world, which has no equivalent in other languages. The rule of law in Anglo-Saxon law is not parallel conceptualization in terms of content, and the French legal language has no comparable word and conceptualization at all. So why, when he is conscious, you know, there's a difficult, you know, in French to apply. We are using here English, yeah. So we presuppose that it is clear what is meant. But why they are so sure, you know, they know how it sounds in Hungary and Hungarian or the Polish language in our Polish tradition. With this Rechtsstaatlichkeit, it is very interesting because if you think just logically, can you have a Rechtsstaatlichkeit on a Staat without state? You cannot, yeah. This is why when we visited with AFCO committee, German Federal Constitutional Court, one of the judges, Professor Huber, said to us, my duty as a judge of the German Constitutional Court is to preserve the German statehood. So why does not apply to Hungarian or Polish judge of the Tribunal Constitutional Court? Yeah, so it's the same is with other concept. Yeah, like judicial independence. Yeah, one of the Tushnet, this is the controversial, loyal American, but very interesting, defending populist, with exception of so-called Polish and Hungarian populist. And he said, standard example of lack of judicial independence is telephone justice. Yeah, somebody, politician called the politician. We had in Poland such an example. This was when Donald Tusk was prime minister. There was a big scandal. They wanted to sell Polish state-owned airlines to the German airlines, and there was the so-called Amber Gold scandal. And there was a procedure in the court, and it was revealed by journalists. There was a telephone, and so this is the only case such an influence known in Poland, as a generally in the public. But he said, as Tushnet said also, but beyond this, the idea of judicial independence gets complicated because we want judges to be accountable. Independent, but accountable. Accountability matters because a completely independent judge could enforce the law based on his bias against one of the parties or on her idiosyncratic views about good public policy requires and so on. Yeah. So, and in many cases in Poland, we have, you know, probably this society of the Polish judges called Justitia. According to me, they are left-wing activists. They are the left-wing liberal activists. So, and they always try to impose on. So this is and so on, yeah, and so on. One quotation more from Tushnet. What counts as decision according to law varies from one legal culture to another culture. So why they think, you know, they understand Polish legal culture? Several years ago, I was invited to the discussion in Germany, in Kassel, and there was this is nice but provincial town in Germany. There was a there was a German professor from this university, and he took the Polish constitution and attempt to teach me, you know. And I said, you know, as far as I know, to be educated as a lawyer, it takes a lot of time. Why do you think, you know, you never study Polish law? You never, what do you think you know more about Polish law, like, you know, our expert and so on. So I would say, if we look more precisely, it is philosophically for me, it's very interesting, because this rule of law means, according to some authors, not only that you rule according to some bylaw, by rules in framework of law, but it should be the rule of law. It is law which is ruling. So this is the questions of the political power and who has this power. And this is, of course, a myth that law is embodiment on reason. Yeah, if there is a ruling is law, abstract, something abstract, this is not the judge, this is the law. Yeah, and this is embodiment, you know, this is like this, all this Kantian ideology which is prevailing in our parliament. But very honest people sometimes write, this is all about politics. And I read just a paper published by 3 authors associated with Central European University, and they say, we argue that the radicalization of Hungarian and Polish stance on rule of law, the EU and liberal norms, is the result of long-term counter-hegemonic project of nationalist conservative forces. The project is guided by strategic aim that seeks to replace the liberal order with a new nationalist, ultra-conservative Christian order. And I asked myself, what is this ultra-conservative Christian order in my country? Is anybody, you know, coerced to go to the church? No, there is a, it's if you, at the end, if you read, this is concerning, you know, marriage, abortion, you know, all these things which a couple of years ago, I think 10, 20 years ago, were not the standard of liberal democracy. When I was asked once my students in Germany, what is the liberal democracy? I said, yeah, it's a homosexual, the same gender marriage and abortion and so. And they say, of course, then Germany was very long not liberal democracy. So, so this is on the level of the politics, and I would say on the end it is politics, and behavior of our colleagues in European Parliament shows this very, very clearly. And maybe in the next intervention I will say something about Polish situation now, because it's a very interesting situation. For first time, we have now the situation that after 8 years of the, let's say, conservative government, it came to change, to liberal change. And what are the consequences in these terms of the rule of law? But this is, I would say, will be the next.
Next complete only one sentence.
Yes.
Excuse me, only one sentence. No, it was quite interesting for me, this presentation about the different meaning, the rule of law, l'état de droit, and Rechtsstaat. Because if you see the UK, there is no written constitution in UK. It means that the judges who elaborated the principle of the rule of law, and the judges who can evaluate whether the rule of law is accepted or don't accepted in UK. The role of the judges is very important, and they are responsible to respect, to make respect the rule of law. L'état de droit, it is a state, l'État. L'État in France, who determine the most important elements of the rule of law, of the l'état de droit. And if you see, the judges play another role in France than in the United Kingdom. If you see the Cour constitutionnelle, the president of the Cour constitutionnelle, Monsieur Fabius, who was previously the prime minister and so on. The state is very important when you see also the court. The Conseil d'État, the president of the Conseil d'État, the prime minister. It means that the court are under the control of the state. And it means the state who can define also the element of the rule of law. If the Rechtsstaat is the third, Otto Meyer was a very important scholar, lawyer in the end of the 19th century. And he defined also the notion of the Rechtsstaat, saying that the law is under the control by the judges, the law. But the most important, this is the law. It means that behind the three different expressions, there are three different history also. It is very important, if you speak the legal culture, it is very important also to know what is the legal culture in UK, in France, and in Germany. Excuse me, that I wanted also to mention this.
I just wanted to start with that also. Thank you, European Conservative, for the invitation. I'm obviously the less experienced guys in this panel, but I try to give you a whole image of what is happening in Spain. And from the same point you were talking about, I think it's very important that we understand that when talking about rule of law, we're talking in the British way. And as you said, when you have a state, in Espanol, in Spanish is Estado de Derecho, which is a État de droit, Rechtsstaat, something similar. There's always a figure of the state. State also means there are different powers and somehow a check and balances between them. But in my case, when I'm very happy to talk about my country, but at the same time I feel quite embarrassed because there's nothing good to talk about my country in this way, about when coming to the rule of law. And I think we should ask also a few questions that maybe not all the people want to know, want to ask, want to have the answer. Do you think, you people in the crowd, do you think we really live under democracy in your countries, in Europe? I don't think so. I know this is quite a provocative question because as Gustavo Bueno is a Spanish philosopher, he talked about the democratic fundamentalism. There's the idea that the more we repeat that we are under democracy, we pretend to be under democracy. It's the same in the rule of law, but it's not. We are not living under democracy, at least not in Spain. Why? Because in Spain, there are no difference between powers. By constitution, for example, judges can be chosen and should be chosen by, at some extent, by politicians. Now we have, in the new government, we have Felix Bolaños, which has three ministers in one. He's the Minister of Presidency. That means that he also is in charge of the intelligence services. He's in charge, he's Minister of Justice, and he's Minister of Relations with the courts. So you have he's the second most powerful guy in Spain, is this guy. And he's been the person in charge of coming here to Brussels for the last 6 months to discuss with these independentists this amnesty law, which is obviously against the rule of law, or even the État de droit or Estado de Derecho. But if you let me go a little bit far away in the time, let's ask also about how our nations are under the rule of law right now. I mean, how are they destroyed? We are not living under political nations as we know because the cultural nation is destroyed. I think this is something that we have to think about. We are not living anymore in political nations because the cultural nation is destroyed. European Union, it's very based on the basics of European Union, was to create the actual European Union that are being promoted by the change or the modification of the treaties. At that time was Charles de Gaulle, the French president, who said no, because living in this kind of Europe, where nations are not nations anymore, that he knew that somehow means that the nations will disappear. French also, we can see how France is right now, and it's almost about to disappear. Also Germany, also probably Italy, also Spain, as we knew. But also, when talking about cultural nations and political nations, de Gaulle also said, for example, having massive immigration or having immigrants in France is good, because it means that France is an international country. But having too many, it means that France will be not anymore France in the future. So somehow we are suffering that also because of the European rule of law. And I think this is something that we have to think about quite good. Some people think that this is kind of fate or fortunate, but I maybe you call me the conspiracy guy, but this has been planned for many years ago. And for example, let me quote Javier Solana, which is a socialist, who is former Secretary General from NATO. He said 8 years ago, quote, "The role of Europe is essential. Europe can and must be some kind of laboratory of what a world government can be." I repeat, Europe can and must be some kind of laboratory of what a world government can be. This was 8 years ago. And we are now seeing the consequences of this proposal. The reform of the treaties will mean that the kind of super state of United States of Europe will come. And for that, they need to impose this rule of law over the État de droit or the Rechtsstaat or the Estado de Derecho that we have in our national countries. But when it comes to Spain, many people probably you don't know anything about what is happening in Spain. How many of you have been following Spain politics for many years? Just one. Okay, this is fun. Because I tell you, I will blow your mind when talking about the violation of the rule of law by the Socialist Party. The Socialist Party is an old one, 150 years almost. In the 1930s, they participated in the first coup d'etat, not was Franco, was Socialist Party in 1934, with independentists in Asturias, with socialists and communists. Now, the actual government, the actual Socialist Party, was modified before going to power again in 1982, and it was funded, actually, by the Germans, also Americans, but especially German, in order to prevent the communists to take over the control after the death of Franco's death. The first change, one of the first laws they attacked when they attacked the independence of justice was in 1985. 1985. That is 40 years back in time. They control the justice system due to this law that they, so somehow it's the same as the amnesty law. They are promoting laws that they allow them to change other laws, thereby controlling the judges. Now, since the very beginning, the socialist is a Marxist socialist party, but they left away the Leninist part. But they're also federalists. Probably many of you will be okay with the kind of this idea of European of regions. I'm not, because in my case, Spain was one country. Now we're having 18 governments. So we have the central government now in charge of the socialist government with other allies in charge. And then we have another 17 regional governments with 17 parliaments, with 17 social care systems, with 17 education laws, with 17 blah, 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 blah. So imagine when you're talking about rule of law, how can you defend it? How can you tackle it when you're having 18 different rule of laws in the same country? This is not only European affairs, but it's also national affairs. But in Spain, in this case, imagine that also during the worst part of ETA terrorist group, they form a death squad by the government called GAL. It could be a nice idea if you think that okay, the state should defend itself against terrorism, but the problem is that they mistake some objectives and they kill innocent people. How many of you know this? They were in charge in the government for 14 years. They kill innocent Spanish people. Nobody knows that. Where's the rule of law against Spain? Where's the rule of law against the Socialist Party? Then we have, for example, José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, the former president from Socialist Party since 2004. That year, they passed the law of the gender law, the gender violence law, which means actually that we as men are always, how do you say it in English, that when you are not supposed to be in law, when you are presumed, you are presumed guilty because you're a man. Since the very beginning, instead of you are not guilty, you're guilty. Where is the rule of law here? The Constitutional Court said that it's constitutional. Why? Because they control the Constitutional Court. In the last months, in the last year, they took over. Let me tell you. They took over the Court of Auditors, thanks to the concession of Pablo Casado, former president of the Popular Party, by the way. They control the media. For example, during COVID, they gave away more than 200 million to public media, and also private media. They control the Constitutional Court, thanks to promoting leftist judges since the very beginning. They are sizing now the main body of judges. That's why they are pressuring the Popular Party, and now they are asking the European Union to intercede to end this problem. Some people, especially conservative, think that having the European Union interfering in your justice system is okay because it means that the socialists won't take over it. But imagine that it means that the Brussels is controlling your justice system. So at the end of the day, it's not that good. They control the unions. They control the state security forces. And another example, this is so embarrassed. Do you know who is Delcy Rodriguez? Delcy Rodriguez is the second in charge of the Bolivarian Venezuelan government. She's the one in charge of the terrorist, of the, here we come, even in Spain, of the torture system in Venezuela, okay? She's forbidden to enter the Schengen space. So she came to Spain during the last legislature. She came to Madrid. She met one of the socialist ministers. She came with 40 bucks, 40 bucks. Nobody knew what's inside. We presumed it's money and gold. But Ábalos, the minister, former minister, he gave the order to erase the cameras records so we cannot check. And nobody knows what happened in the airport. That happened when the government was ruling. Now they are applying the amnesty law, which means that those people, independent people from Catalonia, all the crimes they have committed since 2012 will be erased. There's no pardon. It means that they will be erased. You know damnatio memoriae, like in Roman Empire, which means that they erase you from all the registers? This is the same. There won't be any register. There won't be anything bad. That means that all problems like, for example, attack the law, attack the constitutional system, coup d'etat, misfortune of money. So you have the amnesty law promoted by the government because they need 5 votes from the independentist party. And nobody is saying nothing about this. And I give you just 5 examples.
Let me actually,
Sure.
I'll stop you right there for a moment because I think this point that no one is saying anything about it is what makes this panel really important because in fact, no one in this city is saying anything about it. At the same time that there are concrete ramifications to these accusations of violations of rule of law in Hungary, in Poland. I wonder if I could perhaps turn back to the other panelists to give some examples of how it's been weaponized and what the effects have been.
First of all, there are a lot of questions, of course, on the table, but let me to say some cases also where there are the discussion. First of all, among the lawyers also and the politicians, this is about the primacy of the EU law. I think is also very important. It shows what is the relationship with the national constitution and the primacy of the EU law. Sometimes the different constitution court receive the criticism, as I mentioned, the Hungarian Constitution Court, but I can mention also the German Constitution Court or the Polish Constitution Court. We receive the criticism because we would like to respect the national constitution. And the relationship between the national constitution and the EU treaty is not easy question, because for us it's very important to protect our constitutional identity. when we speak about the migration and we receive a lot of criticism about the migration, I have to mention also that I don't know which article in our constitution, maybe the E paragraph, there is that our population, the territory and so on, it is a very important issue, belongs to our constitutional identity. And when we speak of the relocalization, for example, in this case, how we can divide the refugees in Europe, in this case, the Hungarian government say that it's our responsibility to give the possibility to enter in our country, to live there. And we receive a lot of the criticism that the rule of law is not respected in our country. But I think it's very important issue because on one hand, the Hungarian constitutional, the judges and constitutional court have to respect the national constitution, and on the other hand, there is the EU regulation. And there is the conflict between the EU regulation and the constitutional, our constitution. I think it's very important issues. And where is the problem? Because in the treaty, there is a very important sentence, the ever closer union. Right. And my problem is, where is the border of the ever closer union? Because if there is no border, in this case, we can unify everything and so on, and there is no constitutional identity in this case. And we didn't want to create a state. Europe is not a state. It means that we would like to maintain our freedom also in different questions. For example, I speak about the university system. For example, because we receive a lot of criticism, we modified our university system. We introduced the reform, and now beside the universities, we created public trust. And the public trust, there are the trustees also who give the help to the management, to the rector, and so on. And immediately the Commission suspended the Erasmus money and the Horizon money. It means the Commission wanted to punish the students, the first, and the researchers. And when I go home and I give the lecture to my students, I would like to speak about Europe. What is the reason that we are there? It is beautiful things to be European because you can go to abroad, you can learn there and so on. But the money is suspended. It means that the Spanish and the other nationalities can arrive to Hungary, but the Hungarian students are unable to go to abroad to study there. I see it unacceptable. And I think the roots of the problem, this is the political union. Because before Maastricht, it was very easy. It was only the for freedom. It was very easy to work together. It was a common interest. But when we would like to create a political union without border, immediately there were so many problems. And after this, who can decide? Of course, the Luxembourg court and the Strasbourg court. Sometimes there is a different interpretation between the Strasbourg court and the Luxembourg court also. This is we introduced, for example, the transit zone at the border. And how we can evaluate the transit zone. The Strasbourg court decided it is not a detention. But the Luxembourg court, 2 weeks later, told no, it is detention. It means there is no same interpretation of the same rule. It means that we are under the power of the judges and the politicians. And this is the problem because the national politicians are in a very difficult situation. They would like to govern the country, but some politicians and the judges can interpret the different European law, and after this we have to apply because there is a sanction. I wanted to only mention the migration issues because I think it's very important. The independence of the judges. Of course, we modified the different legislation to be conform and so on and so on. But if I see the other countries, I know very well the French system, for example, absolutely, because I worked in France. I lived there 4 years. But any critics? It's been there are founding countries, and there is the countries from Central Europe, and they receive a different type of evaluation. The founding countries, they're founding countries. Belgium, okay, Luxembourg. But Poland, Hungary, one day maybe Romania, I don't know, they will see immediately the other evaluation. it means that the equality is missing. Only on the papers exists equality, but in reality doesn't exist.
Maybe I think that the crucial point, if we look, because of course the questions of national law and European law make this even more complicated. But when we start with this, let's say, general accusation of the Poland and Hungary, and I think this is what our colleagues of the European Parliament have in mind, you know, without knowing any details. Then there are political leaders, which political will, which pursue arbitrary policy. And of course, it also is very important that they are anti-European, yeah, because when they were pro-European, maybe they would be considered differently. But you know, it was always, and they violated the law, constitution, regulation, and so. This is so. In these accusations, always okay. This is. This kind of thinking above the law is, you know, political program, political will, political priorities of these people, and these people were considered as totally, you know, anti-European, not according, you know, what since maybe not from the beginning, yeah. And there's of course difference between Hungary and Poland, because in Hungary, situation was Fidesz had a majority to change the constitution, Poland 2015 not, and so generally I would say the situation looks so that there was not violation of the constitution, there were loopholes, interpretation, not the same style like European Commission is, you know, the European Parliament is doing. There was, of course, with this argument that we need still transformation, you know, to remove the post-communist from. There was also personal politics, you know, the changes of denomination of judges and so on. But according to us, it was not something what actually could be said that was against their independence. And all these reforms, which was difficult, I would say also not very successful on the end, if we look now. But this is the other story. But so it was rather attempt to realize some program which was different than the program until now Polish elites in this legal framework, using, you know, some experts and so on. And of course, as you probably know, there is in United States, especially because they have also quite good and long so-called populist tradition. There's a really interesting discussion about judicial review. Who has the right to decide this is according to law or not? Should be the really court, special court, you know, there is no special court in this sense. But also the questions of the right of the parliament, majority of the parliament. What are the limits of the right? And I think that especially in case of my country, there was for the beginning, you know, to using this accusation of the violation constitution and law in order to prevent this right of the majority to pursue on policy. But what happened now? And this is very, very interesting, because now the role has, in a way, has changed, yeah? Because they won, and suddenly the rule of law is now important, yeah? And it started, you know, directly after the election. The first pioneer was German, Polish, but I think Polish citizen, but German, Klaus Bachmann, who already in October wrote, if the new government really wants to govern, must direct the full force of the police state against peace, against law and justice, and the president. Yeah, he was very honest. Yeah, it's so it's but other, you know, very. This is the publicist. He's professor of political science, one of the private Polish universities. But take, for instance, Marek Safian, still a judge of European Court of Justice. He said, it is necessary to break out of the trap of legal formalism. Now this formal, you know, it's a formal. We have to move forward, you know, it's a... the other authority warned, as a very engaged professor of law, the constitution is a trap. Now there is no constitution, not at all, because they have to restore the other. Citing Carl Schmitt, and they always said, okay, if we refer to all the discussion, Kelsen and Schmitt, they always say we are Schmittian because we say politics is above the law. Yeah, but he is citing Carl Schmitt and said, above the normative order set forth in the Constitution, there is a concrete order that dictates raison d'etat. Once, a couple of years ago, one of the very distinguished Polish former oppositionist, Kornel Morawiecki, father of the prime minister, said he was president, temporary president of the Polish Sejm, and said, above the law is good of the nation. And this was outcry in all the media. You know, I was called by the journalist, you know, from Germany, how he can say. And now they say, yeah, of course, there is something, yeah. And well-known philosophy professor has concluded, naive is anyone who thinks that democracy can be re-established today by purely democratical means. So, but the best is Donald Tusk and his concept, metapolitical concept. He said that this actually, his government, this is the end of law and justice occupation of Poland. We occupied, that means that, you know, all the democratic decisions, 6, were not election. That all the decisions taken, all the institutions created or to reform, they are not valid. Yeah? This is actually this suggestion that alleged occupiers have no right to participate in public life anymore. Yeah? I think interesting for me personally that his grandfather was a Wehrmacht soldier, but that is something you know, additional to this. Yeah. And of course, the argument is also so-called transitional justice. You now going for this, you know, terrible regime of the law and justice, and the people who were against lustration, vetting of the communists, who were always against, you know, they are now thinking, you know, now we have to be, now the state should be strong. And what is the result? The result is, of course, that the courts are given as different approaches. Yeah, there are different sentences. As just recently, Warsaw Court has dismissed an application to enter liquidation on the Polish public television and Polish radio to National Court Register. And what said the Minister of Culture, who is a former colonel of Secret Service? He said, this is not a court. There was a ruling of Constitutional Tribunal that, of course, President had a right to pardon these both our colleagues who are now jailed, the first political prisoners in Poland since 1889. And the Constitutional Court said, of course, President has a right in all the stages of the legal procedure to pardon. Yeah, what is actually was always in the textbook of for the students of law. What said Tusk? This is not a court. It is not. Why? And I now quote the judges from Polish Supreme Court. He said something like that. It is Poland is facing a very dangerous threat trend since a group of judges and the politicians of government who supported them have discovered a new way of pursuing their own goal, namely to ensure control by ignoring the ruling of those courts which are, in their opinion, incorrect. Which has been done with impunity as a result of numerous legal and media treatment. And who is also responsible for the situation? Of course, the European Court of Justice, all this is actually what you said. On the end, I would say it's a destroying of Polish statehood. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Because it's a legal entity, something which I could here quote Beckenfurter. He was, I think, a pupil as a student of Karl Schmidt, but he said something. You know, all diese rechtsstaatliches Denken, also to think in the categories of the rule of law, presuppose the state, presuppose a political entity. And now we have a total chaotic state in which actually this is the prime minister and his minister of culture, Colonel Sienkiewicz, who can decide which ruling of and which law is valid, which not. And so it's actually, and this is last sentence, they built up a black image in of Poland. And now it is a justification, it functions as a justification to establish totally arbitrary political power, which is of course good because it's pro-European.
No, only one sentence, because I have forgotten to say that with this blackmail that Hungary received from the European institution, Mr. Orbán will be stronger and stronger. And on the other hand, the Euroscepticism will increase also in our country. When we joined to the European Union, the population, biggest part of the population was so happy. And today, there are a lot of people who say, what is the situation? It's a blackmail. And I think it's very important to know also here in the European institution that this condemnation is counterproductive, absolutely counterproductive. And I think maybe may I say in French, Mr. Chirac a mentionné que les pays d'Europe centrale osaient rater se taire. Se taire, alors to be silent. And now Mr. Orbán, Hungary, would like to explain some positions, also different questions, instead of to be silent.
Very fast. This black image of your country, you were saying now, is the same in Spain. They've been doing that for 40 years. We come from the Franco regime, so everything is black, and this is a black legend and developed country. Everything is in the name of progress. But as we like to say within Spain, once the law is passed, the trick is done. So the rule of law is okay, but who is ruling? Who control the controller? Who control the ruler? But for just one example from your opinion, they passed months away, 2 months away, the Freedom Media Act was supposed to help journalists and media in order not to be influenced by government. But Tusk government, as soon as he entered the government, he controlled the broadcasting system. And in fact, in Poland, you have an independent body to control the broadcasting system. So I raised my hand in the press conference and I said, hey, okay, we're talking about Poland and Hungary, but what about Spain? We don't have that independence that you have in Poland. Most of the media is funded by the state, so nobody wants to talk free. So, as I said before, Spain is a leftist paradise, and I invite you to understand how socialist party is ruling, because you will understand the future, how the future of Europe is.
Right. I think this panel gave us a good taste of the use of, let's say, the very clearly political rather than legal use of the term rule of law, how it's been applied in disparate ways, depending on the ruling ideology or the political ideologies here in Brussels. So one of the things I would hope our audience takes away from this discussion is that we must not think of the rule of law as something it is not when used in the voices of bureaucrats. So this idea that it's a legal definition requiring certainty, non-arbitrariness, independence, equality before the law, all of those legal principles are thrown out the window when it's the political use and politicization, weaponization of this so-called EU value of the rule of law that's obviously none of these things, and in fact is used as a sword to punish those who don't fall in line. So I know we could continue this conversation for much, much longer. I thank you very much for coming. Please feel free to continue the conversations in the reception.
Many thanks.
Thank you.